Welcome to Stellar Sisters, the podcast where cosmic wisdom meets soul-enriching conversation.
We explore astrology, human design, and the unique blueprint of your soul, helping you understand yourself on a deeper level.
Consider this your permission slip to embrace the magic of being authentically you.
Let's begin.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Stellar Sisters. We're your hosts, Chanel and Sydney. And today we are going to talk all about Saturn's entrance into Aries. So this is going to be an episode talking about Saturn, talking about what Saturn means when it's in the sign of Aries. And Saturn is going to be making a conjunction with Neptune as well, which also just moved into Aries. So there is a lot to unpack in this episode astrologically. And then Sydney is going to talk a little bit about the gate in human design that Saturn's entrance into Aries is going to be transiting through. And then at the end, we will do horoscopes for each sign so you can get a little taste of what area of life this transit is going to be happening in for you. So, this is a very exciting episode. Um, Astrologically, there is so much to unpack that's happening with this transit. So we're going to try to make it as concise and digestible as possible, but this transit really is so packed with meaning and nuance, that this probably won't be the only episode or the only time that we talk about this topic. You know, Saturn just entered Aries, but really it's going to be there until 2028. So this is the very beginning of a much longer term transit here. So um like I said, there's a lot to unpack and I'm excited to dive into it and jump into it. Um but yeah, this is just the beginning for this transit, really.
I'm excited, but I'm
Um
also nervous.
I know, same. I feel the same way, especially as a Libra sun, you know, and you're a Libra rising, because I think the cardinal signs, especially Libra, Aries, Capricorn, and Cancer, are really going to feel this transit very strongly. Um, Especially if you're a cardinal sign rising, I think, because that's then happening in your first, fourth, seventh, or 10th houses, which are very prominent houses in the birth chart. Um, and this Aries, Saturn, and Neptune is going to be opposing my Libra sun, you know, which is a big deal too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, huge.
yeah. So Um, yeah, there's a lot going on here. So we will kind of jump into it and just kind of talk about Saturn in general. So Saturn has been in Pisces since March of 2023. So a little over 2 years, Saturn's been in Pisces, and it moved into Aries on May 24th, 2025. And it will be in Aries until September 1st of 2025, until it retrogrades back into Pisces, really to finish out the year. And it's in Pisces until February 13th of 2026, where it enters Aries again and will be in Aries for over 2 years until April of 2028.
Wow.
So this is the very beginning of Saturn in Aries, just this couple month period this year where Saturn moves into Aries, and it actually only ingresses to 1 degree of Aries. So it's still in the very, very beginning of Aries for this year. And then, when it re-enters Aries in the beginning of next year through April of 2028, that's when it has its much longer stay through Aries. So we're just getting a little taste, the very beginning stages of Saturn in Aries this year. Um, so, you may start to feel it this year, or you may really not start to feel this transit until we get into next year, you know, 2027, 2028.
Mhm.
Like everything in astrology, Saturn is a cycle, and Saturn takes about 30 years to go through the whole zodiac. So the last time Saturn was in Aries was about 30 years ago, which was 1996 to 1998. So if you're old enough to think back to that time and kind of think back to what's happening in your life at that time, similar themes can come up now. I know for me, I was 8 to 10, so I don't necessarily have a very good recollection of what that transit meant for me
Yeah,
back then.
me neither.
Um, but, it is good to know that and good to have that in the back of your mind. And then also prior to that, um, the last time Saturn was in Aries was 1967 to 1969. Um, and so especially if you're going through your Saturn return, if you are born during any of those years, this Saturn in Aries transit is especially prominent for you, because it's your Saturn return. And if you are going through your Saturn return, I highly recommend getting an astrology reading to
Hmm.
really kind of dive into that and understand that even further, because this is a big deal.
My Saturn return is when I got into human design and astrology. I think it was,
Same,
yeah,
actually.
yeah,
Yeah, that was when I really, really started taking it seriously as a study.
yeah. And
Yeah.
one of the first things I learned about was the Saturn return. I remember, I mean, you told me some stuff about astrology, but I remember listening to some podcast and they were mentioning Saturn return, and I was just like mind blown. And because I was in that stage of life where I had just moved across the country, like left my job, got married, so many things were changing, and it just opened up this whole new world and perspective for me. This,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Your Saturn return, it's kind of like there's the before and after, and that's kind of how it is in life. It's really like the ending of one chapter of your life and the beginning of the next, and I really feel that difference of like the pre-Saturn return and like post-Saturn return in my life. Um, so yeah, if it's your Saturn return, this is a big deal. Um, so let's dive into Saturn and what does Saturn represent? What are the main themes of the planet Saturn? Um, so Saturn is the planet that represents boundaries and restriction, discipline, reality, time, hard work, effort. And Saturn can really present itself in transits or in our birth chart as challenges, roadblocks, obstacles, and sometimes even endings. Saturn is the planet of maturity, and it can often cause us to mature in the area of life that it's transiting for us. So it can really be this period of maturation, of blossoming, of blooming. You're taking life more seriously. Um, Saturn at its best can make things real, tangible, concrete, and solid. It can represent commitment and dedication, and where your hard work is recognized and pays off. Saturn also can be like the brake pedal in life. Like, okay, where are we putting the brakes on? What do we need to stop doing? What do we need to really slow down with and take our time? I don't believe Saturn is here to make your life miserable. You
Hmm.
know, all of those things don't necessarily sound the best, but Saturn might not feel comfortable in the short term, but Saturn is all about the long-term benefits of something. You know, we had the episode about Jupiter and Cancer, which is like Jupiter is blessings and abundance and luck and opportunity. And Saturn is not like that. But Saturn is here to show you about your discipline and the hard work and the effort that you put into something. And when you put in the work and the effort with Saturn, it will pay off in the long run. And I
Hmm.
always describe Saturn as like your strict parent that makes you do your homework and clean your room. And in the moment, you're like, "Ah, I don't want to do that. That's not fun." But when you grow up and you look back, you realize, oh, I understand why my parents wanted me to like do my homework and clean my room. That taught me structure, that gave me boundaries, that taught me discipline. And I'm so thankful that I had those structures in my life, keeping me aligned.
Hmm.
Um,
I personally, I have to say, I know Saturn gets a bad rap, but Saturn's like one of my favorite planets. Like, even in middle school, I remember like in eighth grade, I feel like we spent a lot of time on the planets and we had to do like reports on the planets. And I was so drawn to Saturn. Like, I think it's just such a beautiful planet. I love all of the rings. Like, it's physically, aesthetically pleasing to look at.
yeah,
And I have so much Saturnian energy in my chart. Like, I have Saturn in Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. I have a lot of other planets in Capricorn. And then I have my chart ruler, which is Venus, is in Aquarius. My sun and my moon are in Aquarius, and they're all
which
ruled by
is ruled by
Saturn.
Saturn.
So almost
Yeah.
every planet in my chart is ruled by Saturn, and I just
Mm.
feel very Saturnian. Like I feel Venusian because I'm a Libra rising and ruled by Venus. Like I definitely feel that. It's in my fifth house, but I feel so Saturnian too. And
Yes.
like I would come home from school and immediately do my homework. I'd do my homework. I'm structured, disciplined before I would like chill and relax and watch TV. Like I've just always been like innately like that.
Yeah.
Like I like having that structure and rules that I follow and boundaries set up in my life.
Yeah.
So there is good that comes from Saturn. It's not
Yeah.
not all
Yes.
bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that is funny, like in your chart, pretty much everything besides your Mars and Jupiter, I think, is ruled by Saturn. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're super Saturnian. And
Yeah.
obviously I'm a Capricorn rising, so Saturn is my chart ruler, so I am
Yeah.
Saturnian as well. So yeah, of course, it's definitely not all bad. There are many, many, many beautiful things that come out of Saturn, and it's so necessary. It's such a necessary planet in our lives.
And so
Um,
much wisdom. There's so much wisdom in Saturn.
agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, you know, but it also is where we're being asked to put in the work and put in the effort. And sometimes it does end up, meaning there are obstacles that we have to overcome during these Saturn transits. But typically with Saturn, it's an overcomable obstacle. It doesn't mean it's not like a Pluto transit where maybe things are felt a little bit more seriously and strongly. Saturn is, you know, typically overcomable challenges if we're putting in the hard work and effort there. Um, and so Saturn is moving into Aries, which is kind of another layer of this transit because this is Saturn in its fall position. So, which pretty much just means Saturn doesn't like being in Aries that much. They're two very opposing signatures. Saturn and Aries don't really go together. So all of the themes that we talked about with Saturn is now in the home of Aries. And Aries is the home of Mars, which is the gas pedal in life. Mars wants to go, you know? It's rash, it's impulsive, it's quick, it acts before it thinks, it's independent, it's a warrior, it's assertive. So all of those characteristics are completely opposite of what Saturn wants to do. And so that's why Saturn feels very uncomfortable when it's in Aries, because Aries wants to go quick, wants to press the gas pedal, and Saturn wants to be like, whoa, slow down, take our time, let's press on the brakes.
Mm.
So, it's like the gas pedal and the brake are on at the same time when Saturn is in Aries. And so the lessons of Saturn in Aries is how can we learn to take our time? That especially in that Aries part of our charts where we have this natural inclination to want to like go through things really quickly and like speed through them and impulsive and being super independent in that area of our life. Saturn is really asking us to think through our actions. Let's not be so impulsive. Let's take our time. Let's build something here with a thorough plan. And this can also be lessons around assertiveness and individuality, because those are very Aries topics. Um, so going deep into your concept of self, how can I really truly rely on myself? Even when things might be isolating or lonely, how can I build my independence and my self-responsibility in this area? Um, so yeah, that's a major, major key theme of Saturn moving into Aries. Saturn is also making a conjunction with Neptune, which Neptune also just moved into Aries. And Neptune is a very slow, slow moving planet. Um, so Neptune takes like roughly around 15-ish years to transit through one sign. And so Neptune has actually been in Pisces since 2011. So for the past 13 years, it's been in Pisces. Um, like Saturn, it's previewing its move into Aries this year. So it moved into Aries on March 30th, and it will be there until October 22nd of 2025. Then again, it retrogrades back into Pisces, and then it returns to Aries January 26th of 2026, and it will be there for the next 13 years until 2039. So this is a brand new Neptune cycle and a Neptune transit for us in our charts. And this Neptune transit will be much longer than the Saturn transit. It will be there for the next 13 years.
2039, I can't even like comprehend where
I
that
know.
is right now. Just seems so far away.
I know. I know it does. And that's how long these outer planets really take to work on us, to work on our psyches, and to work on us as a collective of, you know, Neptune is dreamy, so dreaming this new dream of Neptune in Aries, it's just the very beginning of this subtle collective and individual shift because those outer planets take so long to transit one sign. It's just such a new era that we're entering here, you
Mhm.
know, of this Aries part of our charts. And it's going to be something that takes a while to process, you know. This isn't like, okay, Neptune and Saturn are both in Aries now, but this is really going to be something that is felt over time, you know.
Mhm.
So as you're listening to this, just really kind of take note, let it sink in, and start to watch these kind of subtle themes come up.
You know what I think is wild about the outer planets is that in our lifetime, we're not going to experience Neptune in every single sign. Like,
Yeah.
did you have it in Sagittarius or Capricorn,
I
natally?
have Neptune in Capricorn.
Yeah, me too. So if you think, like for us, for example, we've only lived with Neptune in Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, and now Aries. And we're not going to see it go through every single sign in our lifetime. So it's just very interesting. I mean, of course, we can look back on history, but I find that really fascinating about the outer planets, how you're not going to experience all of them through every single sign.
I know, I know. It is super interesting.
Hmm.
Um, I think about that all the time too. Yeah, so we're only like this is like our fourth Neptune planet, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it is really interesting. Um, so what does Neptune mean? So we talked about Saturn, which is, I don't know if I said this for Saturn, but Saturn represents like our reality, our physical world. Um, because its limits and boundaries, it kind of gives form to things. It gives form to our physical world, literally. It represents our boundaries and structures. Again, it's a very solid, concrete planet. And Neptune is basically the exact opposite of Saturn. Neptune represents that which is invisible. So it holds space for the invisible reality of our lives. So it represents our dreams, our imagination, psychic openness, spirituality, intuition, illusion, transcendence. So that's basically the exact opposite of Saturn. Um, Neptune transits can sometimes bring a dissolving, a sense of disillusionment, fogginess, delusion. But Neptune, because it's such a spiritual transit, it can also infuse a higher meaning and purpose into wherever it's transiting in our lives. You know, it brings this element of heightened compassion, of oneness into whatever it is we're
Mm.
experiencing.
Wow.
Um, so what happens when Neptune and Saturn come together? You know, because they're so different. Um, and I think it goes kind of two ways, right? So Neptune is dissolving the structures that were built there. So Neptune can kind of dissolve the Saturn structures that we previously had there. So we can kind of maybe experience a letting go, like a shedding, you know, a dissolving of whatever was previously there. But then Saturn is also helping Neptune's dreams and ideals come down from that kind of invisible spiritual world into our real world, into
Hmm.
reality, you know? So there might be some disillusionment or dissolving of maybe what we previously built or what we previously thought was sound. But there is then some opportunity to build something um, that's infused with compassion, that's infused with a higher meaning.
Mm.
And it can help us maybe get real about what our dreams and hopes and desires are in that area of life. So
Wow.
I think there's a real possibility to build something of meaning, of especially of higher meaning than maybe we ever previously thought.
Wow, that's fascinating. Wait
Yeah.
till you hear gate 25 is the first Aries gate that they're going to be going through. And it's all about spiritual love and just having,
What?
yes, it's about having this love for everything and everyone, you know? And I
Wow.
I can get into that in a little bit once you're finished, but it's just I just this is oh, it's giving me chills that they're coming
Wow.
together in this way.
Yeah, we don't talk about this before we record the
No.
podcast. So that's insane. But of course it is, of course it is. That doesn't shock me at all. But then at the same time, it is kind of just it does always shock me about how interconnected and related human design and astrology are.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So that's kind of really what I have about this transit. So there's a lot going on. Like I said, there's so many layers with Saturn and Aries and conjunct Neptune. Um, and like I said before, this is just the beginning of it. So astrology is a practice. So I am interested to see and hear about how these themes are kind of playing out in people's lives and in the area of their charts, that represents. And we'll get into horoscopes so you could kind of have a further understanding of what that means. But um, this is kind of like the beginning of this whole new era, especially in this Aries part of our charts. And I want to say the last time Saturn and Neptune were conjunct was about 36 years ago. So, Sydney, you actually have this aspect in your natal chart because it was conjunct in Capricorn.
Yeah, I was just
Um,
thinking that when you, I was going to ask you that
yeah,
actually.
yeah, in 1989. Um, so I don't have this because I was born in 88 and my Saturn is in Sagittarius. Um, but yeah, so the last time they came together was 1989. And actually, that one was also, and then Uranus joined in. So it was like
Yeah, I have all
Uranus,
three of them right there.
Saturn, and Neptune all in Capricorn. And one thing that happened collectively in the world during that time was the fall of the Berlin Wall, which is a very Saturn Neptune thing, because the Berlin Wall is like literally a boundary,
Yeah.
um, and it fell when Neptune was there with it. So it's a very literal manifestation of the transit.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. And I focus more astrology wise on how this is happening individually in people's lives, and but there are
Yeah.
astrologers that go back, so far in history, tracing these transits throughout history, and I find that to be so fascinating.
Hmm.
Um, um, that you can like kind of go back and see these themes come up again and again over time. Um, but yeah, so that's a lot. It's a lot going on with Saturn and Neptune. But yeah, I'm dying to hear more about the human design gate. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, so since these planets move slowly, we're not going to go through all six gates of Aries anytime soon, right? Saturn's going to be in the first gate, which is gate 25 of Aries, until September 24th. And then gate 25 actually has a couple degrees in Pisces and then it goes into Aries. So it's split between those two signs. So since Saturn's going to go retrograde, it will retrograde back into gate 25 on January 27th. And then it'll be there until March 18th of 2026. So we are going to have this gate for a while. Um, and, we'll talk about the other gates that Saturn's going to hit at a later time, but I'm just going to focus on this first gate for today. And gate 25 is it's the gate of spiritual love. So unconditional love, universal love, like the energy of I want you to get what's divinely meant for you. I want you to get what's divinely meant for you. And I'm going to get what's divinely meant for me. And like, how can we support each other in that and lift each other up through that? Um, I'll probably butcher this, but if you know Brene Brown, she talks about like, we don't with her kids and parenting and stuff, like we don't want candle blower outers in our life. And it's basically like teaching your kids to surround themselves with people who are going to protect their candle light, protect their light and not be this
Mm.
friend who's gonna try to blow out your light, right? So it's
Hmm.
this energy of like, how can we all see each other's light, love each other's light, and protect it and support it? Um,
Wow.
yeah, and it's like having this childlike innocence, like see it through your kid's eyes or like your inner child's eyes. Can you see a butterfly's life as sacred as like a human's life, right? Like it's
Wow.
that's the essence of this gate. Um, so
That's very Neptunian, right? That's like
yes,
everything that I was talking about with Neptune. Yeah.
yeah. And this
And
is
it's
this,
interesting. Sorry, I don't mean to
that's okay.
interrupt, but like, because this is at what, like 0 degrees, 29 degrees Pisces, 0 degrees Aries, 1 degree Aries, right?
Yeah.
So the transition from Pisces to Aries is the transition from Pisces, which is oneness and connectedness with everything, to Aries, which is the experience of being individuated, at the
Mhm.
moment of birth. That's kind of like an Aries moment because we're going from the womb, which is a Pisces environment. You're fully connected with your mother. You're getting absolutely all of your needs met, everything, to all of a sudden when you're born, you are now this individual person who has to fight for their own life, which is
Yeah.
the Aries point.
Yeah. And that's, you just interrupted what I was going to say, and that is
Oh,
exactly what I was
sorry.
going to say. No, no, it's just, it's so hilarious because I was going to like mention the same thing. Like, it's the start of the spring equinox. You're a baby being born, that childlike innocence. They haven't been conditioned yet. And um, this gate, the lower expression of it is like having these traumatic events happen to you and having trauma in your life and being conditioned by others and like ruminating on that and staying there too long and being stuck there and just viewing everything as negative and really kind of being in that dark space and not seeing the light and not seeing the good in someone else, and having more of that spiritual love and seeing the light. So to get out of that, you can use your strategy and authority to bring you into the higher expression of gate 25. Um,
Mm,
but with Saturn being here, like it's bringing life lessons, responsibility, and really spiritual discipline to this spiritual love and whatever house it's going to be in your chart that Chanel's going to talk about. Um, it's just asking you to really have a spotlight there and evolve and change and have wisdom around it and kind of getting more serious about how you love yourself, how you love others, how you love life. Um, and like the world can feel really heavy and unsafe, right? Like it just is. And this is about like how can we keep your heart open in a world that does feel unsafe a lot of the time.
yeah.
Um, and like you can just ask yourself in the different area of your life that this is moving through, like where can you add more childlike innocence back into your life? Like, can you try to see the world through the perspective of your child if you have a child? Can you see it through their eyes? I like to do that all the time with my daughter. Like, what is her perspective here? How is she seeing this? But if you don't have a kid, like just thinking back to when you were a kid and asking your inner child, like, can I see life with more through that childlike innocence perspective? And um, like just really journal around that and meditate around it. This is such a long transit. You're not going to have answers right away. It could take the full going through this gate, and it could also take Neptune going through this gate, which is going to be an entire year. It's going to be in gate 25. So it's going to activate this for a long time. Um, but, what's if you feel like you're not giving unconditional love in certain areas of your life, like why is that? What's blocking it? And then also, how can you receive more unconditional love from others?
Mm,
So that's just a little taste of that gate.
yeah. Wow. I love that. Um, It's just like like I said, so crazy how it always just lines up so perfectly
I
with like
know
the astrological meaning of everything.
it does.
Um, yeah, so fascinating. Um, and we were just talking about Saturn finishing up in Pisces, really, and how we're kind of like just now being able to like look back and be like, oh, this was that lesson that Saturn has taught me for the past 2 years, in
Mm-hmm.
Pisces or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
Um, and you may feel that, you may not feel that, but it's just it's interesting to like think back and process that. But um, yeah, I think let's talk about the horoscopes because I'm sure people are dying to know what this transit will mean for them. And, you know, this is so nuanced and so deep that if you are feeling called to learn more about this, to really get a deeper dive, I encourage you to book a reading. You can book a reading with me. Um, I mean, you can book a reading with Sydney for human design readings. You can book a reading with another astrologer, whoever you feel called to. But, these horoscopes aren't necessarily super comprehensive because there's so much to dive into with every
Yeah.
sign. But this is just kind of a good big picture overview of some of the themes and topics that could come up for
Yeah.
you. Um, okay, well, let's talk about Aries rising first. Um, because this is going to be like a huge transit for Aries rising. So this is Saturn in your first house. So this is really kind of like the beginning of a new chapter of life for an Aries rising. You can think of it as like, okay, this is a total new chapter of self for me. And who am I? Who you're like restructuring your whole identity and sense of self during this transit. Again, this transit hasn't happened for 30 years. So if you're 36 years old, the last time this happened was when you were 6. So this might not have ever happened for you in your adult life yet, thus far. So connecting with yourself, who am I now? Exploring who you are at this point of your life. It can really cause you to mature and really take life more seriously and get more serious about things. This also can sometimes be a focus on your health or your physical body because that does represent the first house. So getting serious about your physical health and vitality there. But um, and because the first and seventh houses are so interconnected, this can sometimes be a what's the word I'm looking for?
Prior to,
Reprioritizing, I think is the word, or like balance of relationships between self and others as well within Aries rising there. Um, okay, Taurus rising, this puts Aries and Neptune or I'm sorry, Saturn and Neptune and Aries in your 12th house. So the 12th house represents our blind spot or what can be unconscious to us. So with Saturn there, it can really draw your attention to maybe some unconscious patterns or beliefs, things that maybe you just unconsciously go about doing. This can draw attention to that. And it can be, a time when you are really starting to go inwards, wanting more time alone, taking a step back, and really kind of looking at some of those things. Um, you might really need to do some major inner reflection and go inwards and spend some time alone during this transit. Saturn likes being in the 12th house and it likes hermiting, which is means like, being being a hermit, being alone. And it might bring up some more difficult things from the past, but um this is your time to really review that and clear out that psyche, because when Saturn enters Taurus next in 2028, it's going to really clear out your subconscious so you can step into what Aries risings are going through now, which is this kind of definition of self that they're stepping into. So,
Mm.
really kind of take this time to go inwards and reflect. And if you're feeling pulled to spend more time alone, that's normal. And just really take that time to go inwards and clear out maybe some of those inner workings of your mind. Um, okay, what are we looking at now? Gemini risings. So this puts Saturn and Neptune and Aries in your 11th house. The 11th house is the house of friendships and community. With Saturn there, it can really make your circle small. You're getting really real about what friendships or community or who you surround yourself with. Um, you're wanting that to be substantive. You don't want fake, fluffy relationships or friendships. So you might find yourself distancing yourself from friends or others who you just don't resonate with anymore. You're really wanting to maybe cut back on having a quantity of friends or acquaintances and really focus on quality there. Um, let's see, for a Cancer rising. So this is Saturn, Neptune, and Aries in your 10th house. Um, so this is a pretty, substantial transit for a Cancer rising, because this is happening in your 10th house of career, in public life, and professional life. Um, with Saturn in the 10th, I can really see it going like one of two ways. This can be a time where, you're being asked to reevaluate your career. Are we going in the right direction? Is there some sort of correction that needs to happen here? What do I need to put the brakes on in terms of my career? What do I need to stop doing in terms of my career? I have seen people, get laid off unexpectedly during this transit, and then they are redefining what their career means to them. Um, Alternatively, you can sometimes embody that Saturn transit with the 10th house and become this mature, wise leader or guide somehow in your career. And maybe your hard work and dedication and effort is paying off in terms of your career with for Cancer risings. Um, with a Leo rising, this is putting Saturn and Neptune in your ninth house. So the ninth house is the house of wisdom and philosophy and religion, and spirituality. So this is really kind of a reevaluation of all of those topics in your life. What do I believe in? What is my religion? What is my spiritual practice? Um, you know, um, you may choose some sort of spirituality to kind of learn about or take a new path there, or um, become like a disciple of a certain religion or spiritual path with, because Saturn is very, that disciplined energy. You might feel like that has been really lacking in your life, and so you're kind of trying to figure out and make meaning of that in your life. This could mean also travel. Travel is becoming of more of importance to you, making sure that you experience new things. Or sometimes this is going back to school, or doing some sort of like higher education as well. Um, for Virgo risings, this is Saturn and Neptune in the eighth house. So this can be a transit that's all about money in terms of taxes, debts, inheritances, mortgages, or any kind of like joint income, like your partner's money, or something like that. Um, but you can get really disciplined and serious about like, making sure that you have the right investments, that your 401k is all good, that you're focusing on your retirement plans. You're really getting kind of like those financial matters in order. This can also kind of be psychological as well with the eighth house. Um, you know, Again, this can be a really good time to seek out a healer or therapist or someone to maybe kind of help you navigate some of those deeper psychological or emotional issues that can maybe kind of come up sometimes with Saturn in the eighth house. Libra rising. So this is Saturn, Neptune in the seventh house. Um, so this is all about your relationships. Um, this is I've seen Saturn in the seventh house. So um, if you're single, this can be, really about getting serious about finding a partner. You're maybe have been dating around and just, not taking it serious, but you're like, wow, I'm really craving that commitment. I'm really craving that like long-term committed partnership. If you are in a relationship, this can sometimes be redefining your sense of commitment. This can sometimes represent, um, struggles in terms of partnership and what does it really mean to be committed, in a relationship. This can be maybe some fault lines or cracks coming up in terms of relationships and asking you to really recommit and engage actively in deepening your relationships. This can sometimes represent some sort of, maybe your partner as a Libra rising could end up going through a more challenging or difficult time because the seventh house can represent just your partners. Maybe they're under a lot of stress in some way in their lives, and this can represent a time where, maybe that relationship feels a little bit strained. But it's really asking you to look at, um, how am I in relationships and what is really working for me in terms of my relationship dynamics and what can this relationship teach me, about my own commitment in relationships. Um, For a Scorpio rising, this is Saturn in the sixth house. Um, this is really all about hard work if you're a Scorpio rising. This looks like a new era of really taking on a lot of responsibility, a lot of commitment, a lot of discipline in terms of your daily work habits. So this might be a time when you are really focusing on building something for work. It can feel very productive with Saturn in the sixth house, um, but it can also, I also want to warn you about burnout and making sure that you are making time for other things in your life. Besides work, because this can sometimes make your life, your daily life feel like a grind. With Saturn there, it's all about responsibility and discipline in your daily life. So I want to just, but it can also encourage you to create healthy structures in your life to make your life easier. And that can be work related and that can also be health related, so make sure that you are putting in the consistent daily habits to improve your health, to improve your daily life and especially your work life as well. For a Sagittarius rising, this is Saturn in the fifth house. So the fifth house is the house of joy and pleasure. And with Saturn here, Saturn's a very serious, disciplined sign. And so it can sometimes mean there's maybe a restriction of that joy and pleasure in your life, and really asking you to focus on that and, like, what does bring you joy and pleasure, and committing to those things in your life. Maybe you need to schedule those things into your life to make sure that you are still experiencing that. um, the fifth house also is the house of children and pregnancy, and I have seen that come up when Saturn enters the fifth house. Like Sid, when Saturn was in your fifth house, you got pregnant with your daughter. So that can be something for Sagittarius risings. If you do have children, this can be maybe a time of teaching your children more about responsibility, and helping them be more responsible and self-sufficient with your children. Um, this can also be kind of like dating romance, kind of similar to the Libra rising horoscope, where, if you've kind of been dating around and, not really finding the right person, this can maybe have you get really serious about wanting that commitment in your life. Okay, Capricorn risings. This is Saturn, Neptune in your fourth house. So this is really a brand new era in terms of home and family. This can be your physical living situation, finding the right home for you. This can look like renovations or moving, or changing your living situation to adapt to whatever works for you at this point in your life. This can sometimes refer to um, your actual family, some changing dynamics in terms of your family, and maybe you are taking on more responsibility in some way in terms of your family. But this is a time in your life when you are going to be really focused on home and family. Um, and I'm a Capricorn rising, and I feel that just so strongly. This pull towards my home and family, and I know I just had a baby, last year. But as someone who's a Libra sun, with my son in the 10th house of career, this energy of like being pulled down into my home and family is such a new energy for me. And I'm really trying to lean into that, instead of being so focused on my career and public life and professional life. So for me, I'm already really feeling that pull down into home and family, um, with Saturn there in the fourth. Um, Aquarius risings. Um, This is Saturn in your third house. So this is really all about mastering your communication, and taking responsibility for your communication. How are you clear in what is important to you, in communicating your ideas, thoughts, emotions in an effective way, and really working and honing on your communication skills. um, for me, this looked like that, because Capricorn risings just went through this with Pisces in the third. And I was called to start this podcast and really start sharing my knowledge and sharing my truth about astrology, which um isn't always super easy or comfortable for me, but it's really working on that communication skills and making sure that my voice is heard. um, this can also have to do with studying. Maybe you are learning something new, taking a new course, really exercising your mind. um, is very much about Saturn in the third. You're reading about something new, you're taking a new course, you are studying something, maybe not necessarily in a formal way where you're going back to school, but really getting serious about learning. Um, okay. And lastly, Pisces risings. This is Saturn in the second house. So this is your house of money and income. So um, this can be a time when you are really getting serious about your finances. You're really getting serious about your income. Maybe you are starting a budget. Maybe you are, allocating your expenses very closely. There can sometimes, with Saturn in the second, be a restriction on income in some capacity that causes you to like reconfigure your finances. But it's really asking you to focus on building that income and money and revenue sources that will sustain you for a long term. Um, I do see a lot of people kind of start businesses during this transit because they're really putting in a lot of work and effort to build up this kind of new stream of income for themselves. And that doesn't happen overnight. It's like a Saturn thing that takes time and energy and discipline to do. Um, yeah, so that is the Pisces rising horoscope.
Love those. Astrology is so spot on. I mean, like you were saying, when Saturn was through my fifth house, it went into my fifth house, and I was just so focused on, okay, I want to have a baby now. Like, I'm ready to have a baby. Like, I just want to start really settling down with building a family. And then once it went into my sixth house, I was more focused on like day-to-day routines and my health and implementing things that would support my health. And I feel like that transit was long, so I like went through a lot of different things like somatics and started Pilates, which really stuck. I feel like certain things really stick during Saturn transits, like the
Yes,
discipline. Like
yep,
I started Pilates and I have been going consistently for over a year now and I love it and it's easy for me to implement.
yes.
Um,
And that's the beauty of a Saturn transit is that like
yeah,
it's definitely all about long term,
yeah,
and so that's a perfect example.
yeah. And then, like I was telling Chanel last week, Pisces in that last or Saturn going through Pisces in the last couple degrees, I ended up injuring my back. And it's just been so painful and it's lasting forever. And I was telling her, I was like, I want Saturn to get off of 29-degree Pisces, get out of my sixth house. And then I know like my back's gonna improve. And it moved into my seventh house and I hadn't had relief. But just that little shift, the lesson that I started to see was my partner has just been there so much for me. Like he's always supportive, but just really stepping up to help me out with not even being able to really get dressed myself or bend over or pick up our kid. And my parents have been really stepping up and supporting. And I just feel like I'm a person that doesn't want to ask for things or receive things, and it's really forcing me to receive from these major relationships in my life because it's now in my seventh house. And
Hmm.
with that gate 25, it's like, how can I receive more of that unconditional love in my life? These people that
Yes,
love me so much. So it's just that initial entrance has really forced me to start thinking about those things. And it's pretty immediate for me when Saturn changes signs, just like,
yeah,
and it's not like I have all the answers right away, but it's just you can feel that energy shift to the different focus and different area of life.
for sure. For sure. I agree, especially if you are a Capricorn or Aquarius, or have heavy Capricorn or Aquarius, in your chart, because Saturn is your ruler. So I do think
Mhm.
that when Saturn switches signs, it's a big deal for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and like I was saying, Saturn going into my fourth house, the fourth house is the base of your chart. It's the foundation for everything in your life. And I do just feel this pull to focus on my home and family at this time. I haven't felt such a strong desire to do that like ever before in my life, you know? And I totally feel that shift.
Hmm.
So interesting. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
such a good example.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's um, just some huge shifts coming for 2025, some major astrology happening. So I hope you found this helpful. I hope you found this insightful. Um, please let us know if you have any good Saturn stories. I'd love to hear it. But thank you so much for listening. And if you feel called to rate, review our podcast, we would really appreciate it. It helps get it out to other people who might with it as well. And we appreciate your time. And thanks for being here. And we'll
Yeah,
catch you
thank
on the
you.
next episode. Bye.
Bye.